Hi guys, today we are looking at solid figures. So we're starting to talk about three-dimensional figures. So when we talk about a three-dimensional figure, we also might call it a solid. So a three-dimensional figure is a solid. We also like to write three-dimensional as 3D. So when you hear someone talk about a 3D object or a 3D figure or a solid, these are all the same things, okay? A solid figure has a length, a width, and a height. They're made up of faces. Faces are the two-dimensional figures that make up its sides. So if we look down here at this three-dimensional object here, we have a face on the side. This would be a face. We have a face on the other side. We have a face on the top. We have a face on the bottom. We have a face on the back and a face on the front. So when we talk about a rectangular prism like this, this has 6 rectangle faces. That's why we call it a rectangular prism. Okay, so faces are the two-dimensional shapes. We talked about them. Rectangles, parallelograms, triangles, trapezoids. If you're finding a rectangle or triangle, these are the faces of our three-dimensional objects. They make up the outside of our three-dimensional objects. Some other parts of our three-dimensional figures are edges. Edges are the lines. So when we see the lines that make up our three-dimensional object, we see that we have our edges. So all of these lines that go around the outside of our three-dimensional object, a three-dimensional solid figure, these are what we call our edges. Okay, so edges are the straight lines where the faces meet. And the last one is what we call a vertex, okay? And a vertex, or if we have more than one, we say vertices. This is a point, okay? It's important to remember that a vertex is a point where everything intersects. So here we have a vertex. Here we have another vertex. And all these points, or corners, if you will, these are what we call the vertices. These make up the corners of our objects, okay? So vertices are our corners, like our points where all the lines come together. Okay. Another word we're going to talk about is a net, all right? A net is an important thing that we talk about when we're talking about solid figures. We have a net is a two-dimensional representation of a solid figure, okay? And the net's going to show us all the faces of the solid. So we are going to look at one down below here in a minute, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. But a really important thing to remember is, how do we get a two-dimensional representation of the solid? So if we go down to the bottom of our page, this is what we say, this is a net for a rectangular prism right here. This is what a net looks like right here. And if you're wondering, how do we get a net? I'm going to show you a short little video here that talks about how we get to nets. So a net is basically a three-dimensional shape that's unfolded. Really what you're doing is you're taking all the faces, the top, the bottom, the sides, and you're unfolding them and laying them flat so that you can see all of those sides as two-dimensional shapes. In the case of this cube, we're unfolding it to show all the squares that make up this object. So going back to our net on our paper here, they basically took this rectangular prism up here, unfolded it, and they can see all the parts of this. So we would have the top and the bottom, and then we have the back and the front. We have the left side and the right side. So the net is going to show us all of the rectangles that when folded back together will make that three-dimensional solid. Okay, let's turn the page and let's look at the next page, which is our guided practice. Okay, so in this picture we have another solid. This solid is called a rectangular pyramid, and we'll talk about the differences between prisms and pyramids here tomorrow. But when we look at a pyramid, we see that it's a little bit different than a prism here, and it comes to a point at the top. And what we're looking for here is how do we draw the net of this shape? So what is the net for Gabby's container that she made here that's a rectangular prism? So the first thing says, step 1, determine the base of the solid figure. Well, okay, the base would be kind of what is it sitting on. So if I trace that base, it's definitely a four-sided shape, and it's showing me that they are right angles. So if all four angles in the corner are right angles, then I know it has four sides and four right angles. So the shape of this is going to be a square. So what I'm going to do then, it says draw the base of Gabby's figure in the space below. So down below here I have this nice blank spot here. I'm going to draw a square. And remember, this is just a sketch, so it does not have to be perfect. Just do your best when you're drawing a sketch. Now, step 2 says count the sides of the solid figure and determine their shapes. So going back up to the original here, we're going to count the sides. And it looks like I have one triangle in front and one on the left side, one in the back, and one on the right side. So it looks like I have 4 faces, and they are all triangles. Now each triangle is attached to a side of my base, so when I go to draw this, I'm going to make sure that I attach a triangle to each side of my square. So it's going to look a little bit like a star with these triangles going around the base here. And that's how we draw a net. So today you guys are going to be looking at doing the independent practice, which is the next 2 pages, pages 26 and 27 in this packet. Make sure you do both sides. You have to find some edges and some faces and some vertices. And then you also have to draw a few nets, okay?